Watch this.
It's nice to hear it from the Pope, though. I felt it very strongly within myself.
Catholics around the world are reacting to Pope Francis showing his support for same-sex couples. We ask local church members what they think of the nuanced language. Trees have been dying for years along Highway 55, and nobody seems to know a specific reason why. But a recent tragic death of a boy being killed by one of those trees could lead to a study to find an answer. Of course, a kid named Kringle steps up during the giving season. We're taking you back to when this musical munchkin played the red kettle circuit and helped fill the bucket with his bow. A little more than a year ago, we tried to answer a viewer question about the dead trees along Highway 55, mostly between Horseshoe Bend and Banks, but they were seen in isolated spots all the way up to McCall. It's called the Payette River National Scenic Byway, that stretch of road, and Kyle Kirby sent us an email in July of 2022 telling us, well, the drive isn't so scenic anymore because of all the dead and dying trees lining the road. Kyle wanted to know if it was moths or beetles and why only along the road. Is it the ice melt chemical? What else could it be? Well, finally, about a month later, we found out several factors were likely involved in this. And that's when we spoke with John Wallace, a district ranger with the U.S. Forest Service. And he told us location does play a part. You know, these trees are on the fringe of their habitat, basically on the edge of the forest and the high desert. Kind of like, you know, the rows of corn at the edge of a field. They don't generally look as good as the high stalks that are in the middle. But Wallace also pointed to the other factors found by the Forest Service.
They related it to environmental impacts such as drought, and then which would lead to beetle outbreaks. And then also other factors would be vehicle emissions and road service maintenance products. It would either be whatever Idaho Department of Transportation uses, whether it's ice, whether it's any other types of substance that they'd use to control and clear the road from ice.
So ITD uses a chloride substance, but which leg of that three-legged stool is, well, holding most of the weight of the blame? That's what one Idaho senator would like to know. In this upcoming legislative session, he's hoping to set aside some money for a study to find out. Senator Rick Just of Boise says he was inspired to find the answer after hearing the emotional testimony during a recent meeting with the Idaho Transportation Department. Senator Just said a couple from Valley County got up and asked the department to cut down those dead trees. One had already taken one life, and they didn't want to see it happen again. They were referring to the tree that took the life of McCall 8th grader Colton Jones. Last June, a dead tree along Highway 55 fell on the car driven by his grandmother, crushing the passenger side and killing Colton. Could it have been the chloride solution ITD uses to treat the highway in winter that killed that tree? Senator Just was told by the agency they didn't have any evidence to prove it was the salt mixture. Well, that answer wasn't good enough for Senator Just, so he hopes to find the evidence to know what is killing those trees.
There's an irony there because they put the salt on the highways as a safety measure. I'm not suggesting we just stop things, but we do need to find out what it is. Maybe there's a different application method. Maybe there's a different formula. I don't know. Maybe it's not the salt at all. Let's find out.
Well, he'd like to find out, and Senator Just intends to ask the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee for a budget request to study these dying trees. But maybe we can offer a little help to save Idaho a little cash and share a couple of studies that have already been done. Like in 2014, when Colorado State University did such a study, and they found high concentrations of magnesium chloride in the soil may be toxic, and it can change how trees get the water and nutrients they need. Meaning whatever water the area does get, it would go straight into the soil because, well, it's parched from the salt and it doesn't leave enough for the trees. And if a tree does absorb some of that salt water, it shows itself first in the dead leaves or needles, leading to the eventual death of that tree. Then in 2019, the province of Alberta, Canada, well, they came to the same conclusion. After pointing out sodium chloride is one of the most used salts to de-ice roads, and some studies have also shown it's one of the most damaging on vegetation, they found the damage to trees was worse with the trees closest to the road, and the harm increases with more traffic because they just kind of spray that salt as they drive by. That damage shows up in the brown leaves and the needles as well, they found, and then the branches become barren and die. So pretty much the same conclusion with both studies. So There you go. There's a head start on your study, Senator Just. I mean, there's a reason salting the earth goes back to ancient times, right? Well, Senator Just said more to our Sophia Bliss, and she also spoke to a University of Idaho forestry professor about what an Idaho study would entail to look at these dying and dead trees. That story about looking into what is killing Highway 55 trees, well, that airs tonight on the news at 10. Murder charge, some health reminders, and there's a bogus donation. A lot more going on in the 208. Here's Jude Binkley with the 411.
The Idaho man charged with murdering his pregnant wife and unborn child is now facing a third count of first-degree murder for the death of his 10-month-old son, Zeke Best. Jeremy James is accused of kidnapping Zeke after he shot and killed his wife, Callie, and unborn child on November 30th. Police found Zeke's body where Best's car rolled off an embankment near Idaho Falls on December 2nd. The Department of Health and Welfare will conduct a mental competency evaluation on Best. Right now, he's in the Bonneville County Jail without bond.
Even though COVID might be a mild illness now for most healthy people, that we still have vulnerable people in our population.
You might be visiting some of those vulnerable people this holiday season, and the CDC says the new COVID strain, JN.1, is the fastest growing variant in the country. It's too early to know if the variant is more contagious, but it does seem to have less severe symptoms than earlier strains of COVID. Doctors say sore throat is the main symptom to watch out for. Best rule of thumb, if you're sick, stay home. Tomorrow and Thursday, help out the Red Cross in their biggest blood drive of the year. Go to the Boise Town Square to donate blood. Head to the Red Cross's website to sign up. Bogus Basin donated more than $18,000 in scholarships so more than 1,000 students can visit the resort this season to learn how to ski. Students from Union School in Nampa and Future Public School in Garden City can use the money for bus costs, equipment rentals, lift tickets, and group lessons. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Jude Binkley.
It takes just 224 words. The foundational cornerstones of the Catholic Church can be recited in, well, basically just a few breaths. And it is recited every Sunday at Mass. It's called the Nicene Creed after the Church wrote the document in 325 AD at the First Council of Nicaea. And you think a belief system that is 1/20th of what the original U.S. Constitution, when it comes to words, well, you would think deciphering that document would be somewhat simple. But centuries have shown us otherwise, including this week when Pope Francis announced his support for blessing same-sex couples. That document, translated into English, uses nearly 5,000 words to explain it. And that term, blessing, is carrying a lot of weight with those words. For example, the Doctrine Office says the blessing should not be mistaken for the holy sacrament of marriage. So this document is coded in nuance, but for some Catholics, as Andrew Bartline learned, there's nothing nuanced about it.
The template of any Catholic parish follows a formula.
It is a universal church.
The pews, wooden. The ceilings, high. The glass, stained.
The same globally, no matter what.
Which makes this house of God right at home
I'm trying to think.
for Alex Street.
Where am I going with that?
But these days, he's going here. The Cathedral of the Rockies.
You would never find that at any Catholic church in this state.
Favoring universal in favor of Catholic.
You know, I'm sitting in a Methodist church.
It's his latest chapter in a lifelong pursuit to follow Christ.
I don't think of myself as ever having left the Catholic Church. Like, I'm not going to say that I'm fully Methodist. I work at a Methodist church.
But Alex will say who he fully supports. A former Catholic youth minister leading the largest group in the state.
The message that I always told them was, you are loved exactly as you are, because that's what God says.
This week, that's what Pope Francis said. Vatican City published a document allowing priests to bless same-sex couples. Granted, the blessing is not confused with the holy sacrament of marriage.
How do we become a culture of encounter?
Monsignor Joseph De Silva spent decades at his parish.
I did.
And he says this
Radical.
change
Dramatic.
took years.
Well, dramatic meaning it's been coming since the Second Vatican Council, which spoke about the joys and struggles of the world are the joys and struggles of the church.
A culture of encounter. Practically, it creates a system of protection. Any priest who wants to give a same-sex couple blessing cannot be stopped by higher-ups.
People who might have been hesitant, afraid to do something like this or even speak about it because of fear of censure, I don't think they have to worry about that.
How do you feel about this decision?
Well, anything that enhances a person's life and makes them feel they're valued or welcomed. I mean, that's the big thing.
Steps toward all, meaning all.
You shared that message.
Yes.
You were punished for that.
Yeah. Or at least I was saying it in a way that that leadership was very uncomfortable with.
A local Catholic parish fired Alex from youth ministry for publicly supporting the LGBTQ community. A message of antithesis to the universal.
I think it's just the fastest growing religion in the world is I used to be Christian of any kind.
Youth ministers spend their lives trying to connect with kids and their cultures.
My Catholic roots still run very deep.
And Alex Street says, for some, there's no secret to the formula.
While I am celebrating with the people who are celebrating what the Pope put out, at the same time that it feels like just such an incremental step toward what is actually just and what is actually called for by Jesus and Scripture.
We reached out to the Catholic Diocese of Boise, mostly to get their take on this recent announcement from Pope Francis to understand their interpretation of the blessing and how it would be carried out in Idaho if somebody asked for it and a priest was interested in that, Brian. And we did not hear back from the diocese in our request. Tried to reach out a couple different ways, but appreciate Monsignor De Silva for helping us understand it. As he kind of fills in on weekends sometimes, but he's not like an active parish priest anymore.
Well, and it doesn't sound like Alex, with this week's doctrine, that he would be rushing back to the Catholic Church and say, okay, all is forgiven, if you would say it that way.
In terms of working in a Catholic church, it seems that he's not rushing back, but he says like he doesn't consider himself an ex-Catholic. Like if he walked into a Catholic church, he feels like he personally would feel at home there, but as things have shaken out, of course, what he experienced professionally working with one, being removed from his position, you know, kind of the conversation we had was he believed that you can love people who are gay and be Catholic. And he didn't need the Pope to tell him that, to know that. And it seemed that he lost his job over it previously for saying that before this instance.
And I wonder if the Boise Diocese saying nothing today is kind of a way of, well, saying something about it.
We'll see if we hear back.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's that time of year where red buckets and bells are swinging and ringing. We're looking back on a season when one kid named Kringle helped fill kettles with his fiddle. All right, this is the time when we remind you the 208 is a two-way conversation. Let us know what you think about the show and what we're talking about. You could even send us a question you can't seem to answer. Just don't forget to include your name and the hashtag the 208. Send your text to us at 208-321-5614, and we could send yours to the big board at the end of the show.
Beautiful shots from above the clouds from the last couple of days with that inversion we've had in place that has kept low-lying cloud cover over much of our area. Speaking of above the clouds, how about this view of sunsets at Tamarack Resort, elevation 7,700 feet at the top here, looking out over Lake Cascade. A snowy, wintry scene there, even though officially we still have one more full day of fall left before we kick off winter on Thursday. In Boise right now, mostly overcast skies, 42 degrees, no wind to speak of at this moment. We do have another round of rain that is pushing into the Treasure Valley and southwest Idaho from the southwest. So the direction of our weather today has been from southwest to northeast. We had that freezing rain early this morning. If you were out and about early, you know, especially for the lower valley in eastern Oregon, it was slick out there at times. Tonight, we will likely continue some showers. This will all start tapering off in the next few hours, maybe another quick round of rain early tomorrow morning. I am watching the possibility of a little bit more freezing rain, some pockets of some black ice possible over in eastern Oregon in particular. So we won't have a lot of wet weather left after what's coming through right now. Instead, tomorrow morning, I think we'll trade the rain for some dense fog that could develop. Locally dense fog, so it may be that kind of morning where you drive in and out of it. Visibility could improve, and worse than if you're out early Wednesday morning. So just something to be mindful of as you're headed out tomorrow. So the system that's generating our wet but mild weather right now still spinning its wheels off the west coast. Remember, around low pressure, we get counterclockwise rotation. So we are getting this warmer air coming in. And as that system continues to dive south, it will take the precipitation with it, but will also send a lot of rain into Southern California over the next couple of days. Already some flood watches in effect for areas like San Diego and south of Los Angeles for the possibility of some flood concerns there. Not good considering it's a very busy holiday week. So if you have travel plans to Southern California in the coming days, make sure you keep an eye on those conditions. Little break in the action. We'll have high pressure that will build in for Thursday and Friday, keeping us relatively mild and dry. Then this system that is way off in the Gulf of Alaska, even further off to the west right now, will slowly start making its way to the south and to the east into the weekend. And that will bring us likely a quick shot of precipitation late Friday into Saturday. It'll also drop temperatures and bring a cold wind into the picture for the weekend as well. So here's your West Central Mountains outlook. Highs still around 40 heading into Friday afternoon, so relatively mild for the first full day of winter here on Friday. Here comes that precipitation. It will be several inches of snow in the mountains, possibly in the Treasure Valley. A quick shot of snow early Saturday, but as temperatures still climb into the upper 30s to around 40, I don't know that it will stick around long enough to give us a white Christmas. Maybe a flurry possible on Monday. Temperatures for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day will be chilly, but seasonably so, upper 30s. We will dry out and see a little more sunshine from Monday into Tuesday.
Well, maybe you've been able to stuff some green into a red bucket this holiday season. Back in 1997, a kid named Kringle helped fill more than one bucket, not necessarily by ringing a bell, but he did it with his bow. John Miller reintroduces us to him from 1997.
Even when the mall is bringing in the bucks this holiday season, sometimes it gets a little slow around Ed the Bell Ringer's bucket. So, straight from the North Pole with the violin version of The Little Drummer Boy. Enter 9-year-old Drew Kringle.
So tell me why you're out here helping out with the Salvation Army.
To make money and to make people happy.
Nobody can say no to a 9-year-old elf, huh?
I guess not.
Especially a 9-year-old elf in duck boots. And suddenly people are digging deep and stuffing bucks in that bucket, and even Ed the bell ringer doesn't mind playing second fiddle.
No, I don't mind at all. Kind of helps ring in business.
He's bringing in the bucks right now, isn't he?
Oh yeah, get my bucket full.
Here and here. You see, after a stop to rub the hands and rosin up the bow, he's off to the hair salon.
Oh, I think he's darling.
Yeah.
He did really well with that.
Yeah, 9 years old.
He's great.
He's from the North Pole.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Over at the cell phone store and the kids' clothing shop, it's always the same story.
I think he's just adorable. I think there should be more of him at Christmas.
An elf without inhibitions when it comes to making magic and maybe a little money with his music. John Miller, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Well, you'd think that tracking down somebody named Kringle this time of year would be easy, but we just couldn't seem to find Drew anywhere on the internet or anything like that. It'd be about 35 these days, so if anybody knows what happened to Drew, if he's out still playing the violin, please let us know. All right. It's not Friday, I know, it is only Tuesday, but never a bad time to learn about some good news. Sandy in Meridian texted us yesterday and said, all right, here's some happy news for the 2-8. Every year, I put out a nativity scene, bought several years ago at a thrift store. Came home this evening and some kind person added a donkey to it. You hear the decorations being trashed, but mine was added to. Love to see that, which is pretty awesome. How about this? An In-N-Out update for you. We're not talking about the wait time to get a burger. There are social media pages that do that for you. But apparently, at the burger chain's newest location in Meridian and the first in Idaho, the wait time is so long, it can drain a tank of gas. Amy Lomas-Brophy posted this picture on that Facebook group page. Y'all, someone ran out of gas. In-N-Out employees to the rescue, of course, which I guess is a thing because people have been posting this has happened a few times since the store opened a week ago today. They must just have a gas can on hand that's for this purpose exactly, because people run out of gas waiting in line. It's not obviously to set fire to their burgers. Pro tip, pay attention to your gas gauge when you're in line. Practice turning your car off and on to conserve. And you might want to bring a blanket because we know it is cold out there. All right, we talked about the dead and dying trees along Highway 55 today. Kim wants to know who's responsible for cutting those trees down along Highway 55. They should be cut down for safety reasons. That would be ITD's job. And if you notice over the summer, and I've driven up there lately, you see a lot of stumps. So they were doing some of that this summer. It's not just the trees on Highway 55 that are taking a hit. It's also very apparent along scenic Highway 75 from Haley to Galena Summit in Blaine County. That's Chris and Haley, who also points out it's 95 as well. The cleanup for ITD between Council and New Meadows, significant tree damage, just as dangerous. So it's all over the place, all over the state of Idaho, and hopefully they can figure it out and fix that problem. What the Pope is doing is heresy, says Mike. You cannot bless sin. Well, that was what he said just 2 years ago, but apparently things change. And, well, you can bless something that you find is, well, two people love each other. That's kind of how it works. I'm a 70-year-old lifelong Roman Catholic, and I applaud Pope Francis for his decision to allow priests to bless same-gender couples. We all need to be more inclusive, less divisive. What would Jesus do? Asked Kathy and Eagle. See you tomorrow.